Hello, welcome to Dracula in Russian Lesson 6. If you have not listened to Lesson 5, please click on it now. If you are new to the channel, please click on Lesson 1.
The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them in his cap. I could do no more. I stole back to the study and began to read. As the Count did not come in, I have written here, "The Count has come." He sat down beside me and said in his smoothest voice as he opened two letters, "This is a reminder. Remember friend translates to Druk. This is a reminder. Remember eyes translates to glaza. The Sgani has given me these, of which, though I know not whence they come, I shall, of course, take care. See," he must have looked at it, "one is from you, and to my Drug Peter Hawkins, the other." Here he caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and the dark smatrait came into his face, and his glaza blazed wickedly. "The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed. Well, so it cannot matter to us." And he calmly held letter and envelope in the flame of the lamp till they were consumed. Then he went on. "This is a reminder. Remember friend translates to Druk. The letter to Hawkins, that I shall of course send on, since it is yours. Your letters are sacred to me. Your pardon, my Druk, that unknowingly I did break the seal. Will you not cover it again?" He held out the letter to me, and with a courteous bow handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could hear the key turn softly. A minute later, I went over and tried it, and the door was locked. This is a reminder. Remember sleep translates to sput. When, an hour or two after, the Count came quietly into the room, his coming awakened me, for I had gone to sput on the sofa. He was very courteous and very cheery in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, "This is a reminder. Remember friend translates to Drug. This is a reminder. Remember sleep translates to sput. So, my Druk, you are tired? Get to bed. There is the surest rest. I may not have the pleasure to talk tonight, since there are many labors to me, but you will sput, I pray." I passed to my room and went to bed, and, strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has its own calms. This morning when I woke, I thought I would provide myself with some paper and envelopes from my bag and keep them in my pocket so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity. But again a surprise, again a shock. This is a reminder. Remember once translates to Adin Raz. Every scrap of paper was gone, and with it all my notes, my memoranda, relating to railways and travel, my letter of credit, in fact all that might be useful to me, were I Adin Raz outside the castle. I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me, and I made search of my portmanteau and in the wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had traveled was gone, and also my overcoat and rug. I could find no trace of them anywhere. This looked like some new scheme of villainy. This is a reminder. Remember great translates to Veliki, 17th of June. This morning, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed cudgeling my brains, I heard without a cracking of whips and pounding and scraping of horses' feet up the rocky path beyond the courtyard. With joy I hurried to the window and saw drive into the yard two Veliki lighter wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, and at the head of each pair a Slovak, with his wide hat, Veliki nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They had also their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend and try and join them through the main hall, as I thought that way might be opened for them. Again a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. This is a reminder. Remember, make translates to delit. This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to veliki. Then I ran to the window and cried to them. They looked up at me stupidly and pointed, but just then the hetman of the Sgani came out, and seeing them pointing to my window, said something, at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or agonized entreaty would delit them even smatrait at me. They resolutely turned away. The lighter wagons contained veliki, square boxes with handles of thick rope. These were evidently empty by the ease with which the Slovaks handled them, and by their resonance as they were roughly moved. When they were all unloaded and packed in a veliki heap in one corner of the yard, the Slovaks were given some money by the Sgani, and spitting on it for luck, lazily went each to his horse's head. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of their whips die away in the distance. 24 June before morning. Last night the Count left me early and locked himself into his own room. As soon as I dared, I ran up the winding stair and looked out of the window, which opened south. I thought I would watch for the Count, for there is something going on. The Sgani are quartered somewhere in the castle and are doing work of some kind. I know it, for now and then I hear a far-away muffled sound as of mattock and spade, and whatever it is, it must be the end of some ruthless villainy. I had been at the window somewhat less than half an hour when I saw something coming out of the Count's window. I drew back and watched carefully and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had on the suit of clothes which I had worn whilst traveling here, and slung over his shoulder the terrible bag which I had seen the women take away. There could be no doubt as to his quest, and in my garb, too. This, then, is his new scheme of evil, that he will allow others to see me as they think, so that he may both leave evidence that I have been seen in the towns or villages posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which he may do shall by the local people be attributed to me. It makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I am shut up here, a veritable prisoner, but without that protection of the law which is even a criminal's right and consolation. This is a reminder. Remember little translates to malinki. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time sat doggedly at the window. Then I began to notice that there were some quaint malinki specks floating in the rays of the moonlight. They were like the tiniest grains of dust, and they whirled round and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and a sort of calm stole over me. I leaned back in the embrasure in a more comfortable position, so that I could enjoy more fully the aerial gambolling. Something made me start up, a low, piteous howling of dogs somewhere far below in the valley, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and the floating motes of dust to take new shapes to the sound as they danced in the moonlight. I felt myself struggling to awake to some call of my instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and my half-remembered sensibilities were striving to answer the call. I was becoming hypnotized. Quicker and quicker danced the dust. The moonbeams seemed to quiver as they went by me into the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered till they seemed to take dim phantom shapes. And then I started, broad awake and in full possession of my senses, and ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those of the three ghostly women to whom I was doomed. I fled and felt somewhat safer in my own room, where there was no moonlight and where the lamp was burning brightly. When a couple of hours had passed, I heard something stirring in the Count's room, something like a sharp wail quickly suppressed, and then there was silence, deep, awful silence, which chilled me. With a beating heart, I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison and could do nothing. I sat down and simply cried. As I sat, I heard a sound in the courtyard without, the agonized cry of a woman. I rushed to the window and, throwing it up, peered out between the bars. There indeed was a woman with disheveled hair, holding her hands over her heart as one distressed with running. She was leaning against a corner of the gateway. When she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a voice laden with menace, "Monster, give me my child!" She threw herself on her knees, and raising up her hands, cried the same words in tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breast, and abandoned herself to all the violences of extravagant emotion. Finally, she threw herself forward, and though I could not see her, I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. Somewhere high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of the Count calling in his harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide by the howling of wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured, like a pent-up dam when liberated, through the wide entrance into the courtyard. There was no cry from the woman, and the howling of the wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away singly, licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew now what had become of her child, and she was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thing of night and gloom and fear? This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to vliki. This is a reminder. Remember, day translates to Dane. Morning. No man knows till he has suffered from the night how sweet and how dear to his heart and eye the morning can be. When the sun grew so high this morning that it struck the top of the Veliki gateway opposite my window, the high spot which it touched seemed to me as if the dove from the ark had lighted there. My fear fell from me as if it had been a vaporous garment which dissolved in the warmth. I must take action of some sort whilst the courage of the Dane is upon me. Last night one of my post-dated letters went to post, the first of that fatal series which is to blot out the very traces of my existence from the earth. Let me not think of it. Action. This is a reminder. Remember, sleep translates to sput. It has always been at night time that I have been molested or threatened, or in some way in danger or in fear. I have not yet seen the Count in the daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others wake, that he may be awake whilst they sput? If I could only get into his room. But there is no possible way. The door is always locked, no way for me. This is a reminder. Remember, friend translates to Druk. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. Where his body has gone, why may not another body go? I have seen him myself crawl from his window. Why should not I imitate him and go in by his window? The chances are desperate, but my need is more desperate still. I shall risk it. At the worst it can only be death, and a man's death is not a calf's, and the dreaded hereafter may still be open to me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Mina, if I fail. Goodbye, my faithful Drug and second father. Goodbye all, and last of all, Mina. This is a reminder. Remember, day translates to Dane. This is a reminder. Remember, once translates to Adin Ras. This is a reminder. Remember, make translates to Delit. This is a reminder. Remember, eyes translates to Glaza. This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to Veliki. In the next paragraph, we are introducing a new word. The word old translates to Stari. Same Dane, later. I have made the effort, and God helping me, have come safely back to this room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage was fresh, straight to the window on the south side, and at Adin Raz got outside on the narrow ledge of stone which runs around the building on this side. The stones are big and roughly cut, and the mortar has by process of time been washed away between them. I took off my boots and ventured out on the desperate way. I looked down Adin Raz, so as to deal it sure that a sudden glimpse of the awful depth would not overcome me, but after that kept my glaza away from it. I knew pretty well the direction and distance of the Count's window, and made for it as well as I could, having regard to the opportunities available. I did not feel dizzy. I suppose I was too excited, and the time seemed ridiculously short till I found myself standing on the window-sill and trying to raise up the sash. I was filled with agitation, however, when I bent down and slid feet foremost in through the window. Then I looked around for the Count, but with surprise and gladness made a discovery. The room was empty. It was barely furnished with odd things which seemed to have never been used. The furniture was something the same style as that in the south rooms, and was covered with dust. I looked for the key, but it was not in the lock, and I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was a Veliki heap of gold in one corner, gold of all kinds, Roman and British, and Austrian and Hungarian and Greek and Turkish money, covered with a film of dust as though it had lain long in the ground. None of it that I noticed was less than 300 years stari. There were also chains and ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them starry and stained. This is a reminder. Remember, make translates to delit. This is a reminder. Remember, old translates to stari. This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to veliki. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, for, since I could not find the key of the room or the key of the outer door, which was the main object of my search, I must deal it further examination, or all my efforts would be in vain. It was open, and led through a stone passage to a circular stairway, which went steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom there was a dark, tunnel-like passage, through which came a deathly, sickly odor, the odor of starry earth newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an stari ruined chapel, which had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in two places were steps leading to vaults, but the ground had recently been dug over, and the earth placed in veliki wooden boxes, manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made search for any further outlet, but there was none. Then I went over every inch of the ground, so as not to lose a chance. I went down even into the vaults, where the dim light struggled, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. Into two of these I went, but saw nothing except fragments of starry coffins and piles of dust. In the third, however, I made a discovery. This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to veliki. This is a reminder. Remember, eyes translates to glaza. There in one of the veliki boxes, of which there were 50 in all, on a pile of newly dug earth lay the Count. He was either dead or asleep, I could not say which, for the glaza were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and the cheeks had the warmth of life through all their pallor. The lips were as red as ever. But there was no sign of movement, no pulse, no breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him and tried to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there long, for the earthy smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was its cover, pierced with holes here and there. I thought he might have the keys on him, but when I went to search, I saw the dead glaza, and in them, dead though they were, such a smatret of hate, though unconscious of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled again up the castle wall. Regaining my room, I threw myself panting upon the bed and tried to think. 29 June. Today is the date of my last letter, and the Count has taken steps to prove that it was genuine, for again I saw him leave the castle by the same window, and in my clothes. As he went down the wall, lizard fashion, I wished I had a gun or some lethal weapon, that I might destroy him, but I fear that no weapon wrought alone by man's hand would have any effect on him. I dared not wait to see him return, for I feared to see those weird sisters. I came back to the library, and read there till I fell asleep. I was awakened by the Count, who looked at me as grimly as a man can smatret as he said, "This is a reminder. Remember, friend, translates to drug. Tomorrow, my drug, we must part. You return to your beautiful England, I to some work which may have such an end that we may never meet. Your letter home has been dispatched. Tomorrow I shall not be here, but all shall be ready for your journey. In the morning come the Sgani, who have some labors of their own here, and also come some Slovaks. When they have gone, my carriage shall come for you, and shall bear you to the Borgo Pass to meet the diligence from Bukovina to Bistritz. But I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula." I suspected him and determined to test his sincerity. Sincerity. It seems like a profanation of the word to write it in connection with such a monster, so asked him point blank, "Why may I not go tonight?" "Because, dear sir, my coachman and horses are away on a mission. But I would walk with pleasure. I want to get away at once." He smiled, such a soft, smooth, diabolical smile that I knew there was some trick behind his smoothness. He said, "And your baggage?" "I do not care about it. I can send for it some other time." This is a reminder. Remember, eyes translates to glaza. The Count stood up and said with a sweet courtesy which made me rub my glaza, it seemed so real. This is a reminder. Remember, friend, translates to drug. You English have a saying which is close to my heart, for its spirit is that which rules our boyars. Welcome the coming, speed the parting guest. Come with me, my dear young drug. Not an hour shall you wait in my house against your will, though sad am I at your going, and that you so suddenly desire it. Come. With a stately gravity, he, with the lamp, preceded me down the stairs and along the hall. Suddenly he stopped. "Hark! This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to veliki." Close at hand came the howling of many wolves. It was almost as if the sound sprang up at the rising of his hand, just as the music of a veliki orchestra seems to leap under the baton of the conductor. After a pause of a moment, he proceeded, in his stately way, to the door, drew back the ponderous bolts, unhooked the heavy chains, and began to draw it open. To my intense astonishment, I saw that it was unlocked. Suspiciously, I looked all round, but could see no key of any kind. This is a reminder. Remember, great translates to veliki. As the door began to open, the howling of the wolves without grew louder and angrier. Their red jaws with champing teeth and their blunt-clawed feet as they leaped came in through the opening door. I knew then that to struggle at the moment against the Count was useless. With such allies as these at his command, I could do nothing. But still the door continued slowly to open, and only the Count's body stood in the gap. Suddenly it struck me that this might be the moment and means of my doom. I was to be given to the wolves, and at my own instigation,